Hello, everyone. Thank you for being a part of our horse talk today. My name is Kman. I am the co-founder and president of Chasing Horses Wild Horse Advocates. We're a small nonprofit organization that has been leading the fight to save the wild horses of Theodore Roosevelt National Park. Co-hosting with me today is Hellyer from Save Our Wild Horses. We do have everyone muted, and we ask that if you have questions that you add them to the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them at the end of the presentation. I'm also going to ask you to be patient with me. I'm going to flip around in a screen sharing and will do my best to put my not so tech savvy skills to use. I'm going to share some personal experience I've had working with our state and federal legislators and then give a short recap. Our hope today is that you'll walk away from this horse talk more comfortable with contacting your state and federal legislators. It's understandable how and why this can seem like an overwhelming thing to do. And today I'm going to ask you to look at things in a different way. Wild horses are important to me, and we get one chance to save them. That's true for every wild horse herd out there that's on the chopping block this year. What are you going to do with your one chance? I want to start by saying before March of 2022, my knowledge of the NEPA process, wild horse advocacy, the legislative process, and what to do to save these horses was as close to nothing as it can get. I'm humbled, but I never see anything that we have done as extraordinary. This has been a huge learning process for me, and if I have knowledge that will help somebody else in whatever you're fighting for, I'm more than happy to help. So let's keep it simple. When you go to a restaurant and you want to place an order, who do you talk to? If you ever see a fire anywhere, what do you do or who do you call? If you want legislative change, who do you contact? Our legislators, no matter what level of government we're talking about, are here to do a job. They're here to do a job that we hired them to do. I was born in the late 60s and grew up watching Saturday morning cartoons in the 70s. Aside from Scooby-Doo, I can't tell you much of what I watched, but I can proudly sing the entire I'm Just a Bill song from Schoolhouse Rock. I mention this often, and some may see it as a joke, but in all honesty, I cannot think of a better way to explain our legislative process. I'll spare you the entire show, but seriously, I do encourage everyone to watch it. I do want to share one part with you. I was just an idea. Some folks back home decided that they wanted a law passed, so they called their local congressman. That's what happened with the Theodore Roosevelt National Park wild horses. It's more than the work that our organization has done. It's because of the collective voices of everyone that has created change.
Yeah, and so, what got me involved and connected with Chris and the other advocates is, first of all, there was a number of folks who just started emailing our legislators. And as Chris shared, in North Dakota, we are what we call citizen legislators. A lot of your states consider themselves citizen legislators, but we consider ourselves extreme citizen legislators because we meet every other year and really only for 4 months. And so right after an election, we prepare in December to come into session the following January through April. And that's when we have an 80-day window that the Constitution allows us to take action, to enact policy, pass resolutions, to establish our budget for the next 2 years. And right at that time, as we were organizing or getting together in Bismarck, I started receiving emails, and I don't know if it was because I was part of leadership or if they were going to all legislators, but it kind of felt like a good cadence of a couple emails each day or within a short period of time, quite a few emails. And I've been serving in the legislature for 10 years. And one of my first sessions, I served on the Agriculture Committee. And at that time, there was work being done to make the Nakota horse, I believe, the official horse of North Dakota. And I just remember getting these emails about the horses who I have never had any interaction with the horses at the park prior to this. And I just remember the thousands of emails we received that session from people all over the world who are in love with the Nakota horses and we're advocating for us to become, or for the Dakota horse to be the official horse of North Dakota and receive some sort of, I think, whether it was just recognition or protection. But because of the volume of people who reached out, we literally fast tracked a bunch of things with the resolution that year because it was just inundating everyone's times. Everyone's mailboxes were filling up with people from North Dakota, from around the country, from around the world. And it really was, for many of my colleagues, getting obnoxious. It just was like, there's a lot going on and, this is an important conversation, but these emails, we have to stop these emails. And the one way we knew we could stop it was to advance the resolution as quickly as possible. So we had the hearings and it passed, and Frank Kuntz and many others in North Dakota who have continued to be strong advocates for the Dakota horses, we were able to have that successfully passed. So when I started receiving these emails, I just kind of had flashbacks of, oh boy, is this going to be another one of those scenarios? The session was already starting off a little tense. There was a lot of new leaders. I was the only returning leader of the 4 caucuses. We're in a strong financial position with the budget, but there was different kind of political factions that were organizing and creating some tension throughout session. So my fear was that these advocates who were advocating to protect the horses in the park may be stumbling into some orneriness. Some of us who just were like, no one wants to do with these horses. What are these horses? So I had reached out and just said, hey, let's get on the phone to Chris and let's talk about what you're trying to do and how we can funnel this into an organized process so that all these advocates around the state and around the country can put their work towards something, and it's not just kind of shotgun across and just random legislators are receiving these emails. How do we make sure we get the right people on board? How do we make sure it's in a process that works with our legislative process? And then giving people an opportunity to advocate through the hearing process. And so that's what got our work going. And we were able to funnel that. And what was nice about that was, as Chris had indicated, there was a lot of back and forth because there was a number of legislators, both in the House and the Senate, and within both political parties, who had interest in making sure that these horses were protected. And as advocates and people who were supportive of the horses were reaching out, telling their family stories or their personal stories about the relationship they have with the horses, many of my legislative colleagues have those same feelings, whether they live in that district or nearby. Senator Rummel, who often photographs the park and the wildlife in the park, and the horses are part of that, or Senator Beckedahl, who's from the Williston area, who, his interest was not only making sure we preserve tourism in that part of the state, but also the impact that the Longhorns have on the park and the people who come to see the Longhorns. And so, in between our other meetings, and, we become very busy in those 80 days, we all just would catch each other and kind of within a short period of time, as Chris indicated, I had said I'll have something ready to go, but I'd rather us work with some legislators from out west who represent this district. So we were able to get some of them on board. It wasn't a hard sell. They had interest. They had connection to the park and to the horses. And so we just funneled it into the resolution process. And for those that are watching, what that means is in North Dakota, and commonly, in a lot of different political bodies, a resolution is not an act of policy. It is actually just a statement. And in this case, it was a statement of support that the state of North Dakota sees the value of the horses in not only the natural wildlife that exists within the park, but also the impact to tourism and a strong quality of life in North Dakota.
Okay. So that was Representative Josh Boucher. He was our House Minority Leader at the time. And that was from a horse talk we did with him last year. The entire talk is on our YouTube channel. He's been very gracious with his time. So he reiterated what I was saying. Our legislators heard from enough people that they had to take action. Again, to interject, I personally never thought there would be a day in my life when I would be saying a sentence like, today when I talked to our House Minority Leader, or even when I talked to House Majority Leader Mike LaFleur. My first phone calls to them were nerve-wracking, to say the least. I didn't know what to ask. I didn't know who to call. I didn't know what to do. So I started local. That's Representative Boucher on the left. and that's Senator Dean Rummel on the right. Dean was a new senator in my area in the western part of the state, as Josh had said, in 2023. He's also someone, as Josh mentioned, is a photographer who frequents Theodore Roosevelt National Park on a regular basis. I asked Dean, what do we do? How do we save these horses? Dean explained to me there wasn't a lot we could do. This is state versus federal, but as we've mentioned, they were getting ready to go into session. So if we were going to do something, we were literally racing against the clock to get legislation introduced. I also want to interject here again and say, although our North Dakota state legislators won't be in session again until January of 25, they're currently working in committees on some issues, and we're in regular talks with House Majority Leader Mike LaFleur so that we're prepared for the 2025 session if there's something that our legislators can do to help us in our fight to save the horses. I've learned over the last couple of years that our state and federal legislators respect what we're trying to do and are more than willing to help us. Dean explained to me that there was talk about doing a resolution. I would need to find someone to sponsor the resolution. So I got on the phone and literally called every North Dakota state legislator until I had someone committed to sponsoring the resolution. Our organization also encouraged everyone across the state to contact their legislators with their concerns about the horses. As Josh said, they were getting inundated with phone calls, emails, and seeing letters to the editor in the newspaper. These people want to keep their jobs. That's something that we really fail to understand. Just like the waitress in the restaurant, if she gives you bad service, you're probably not going to go back. If a fireman consistently fails at his job, my guess is that he'd be fired. Our politicians are no different. We hire or rehire them every election for whatever the term may be, and the majority of them want to keep their jobs. They keep those jobs by keeping their constituents happy. Representative Boucher's district is over 400 miles from Medora. He was getting calls and emails in Fargo while I was calling our legislators on the western side of the state. The great thing about Josh is he got started in politics after being an advocate. He identified with our grassroots work and was happy to help. He also played a huge role in my civic refresher crash course. I also think that there's a very strong misconception that our legislators somehow are knowledgeable about every aspect of life. I've learned that nothing could be further from the truth. Quite simply, they know what we tell them, and if we tell them nothing, then they never hear our side of the story. They learn about different sides of issues during committee hearings and testimony from the public, and this is something that Josh reiterated in the YouTube video clip that I shared with you. I finally got Senator Elkin to commit to sponsoring the legislation. When he finally agreed, he said to me, "Okay, Chris, I'll carry these buckets for you, but I need your help." I said, "You need me to fill the buckets?" He said, "Exactly." He needed me to give him as much information as possible on every aspect of the horses, history, tourism, etc. We even worked with staff from American Wild Horse Campaign to draft a resolution that helped guide the final resolution that was passed. I want to put my tech savvy skills to work again here, and I'm going to share a short clip from the video testimony from the North Dakota State Senate. I'm going to tell you I was extremely nervous about testifying in front of this committee, but again, we get one chance to save these horses.
What happens, we pass this resolution.
Yes, we can.
Is all gonna be great, but let's just say, two questions I have is it a pretty strong opposition, or are the opponents pretty strongly committed to getting rid of the horses and the Longhorns? And second question I have, when we pass this, it doesn't have any teeth in it, but where do we go if they come in and why are they gonna destroy them? Are they gonna corral them and sell them, or how is it gonna work? Do you have any idea?
So the park hasn't been very clear on that. There's a lot, all of the alternatives that they considered are very vague. So one of them says like they will start calling the herd and selling them off, allowing some of them to die out in the park. They'll first offer them out to the native tribes and then to nonprofit organizations with an educational purpose. So the reason why our organization advocated so hard for this resolution is we were trying to make sure that we could get federal support. And at the time, Congressman Armstrong came out right away opposed to helping us, I guess. He came out in support with the park, so he was standing with the park and, saying they'll do what they need to do, and he trusted their process. And Senators Kramer and Hoeven were not speaking out. So we knew that we needed to get their attention, and the best way was to let the state of North Dakota speak. So that's why I'm eternally grateful to all of you. And I know that Senator Kessel, I've spoken with him several times and hunted him down at the Dickinson Coffee with the Legislators. And I'm very grateful to him and his support and all of the writers of this bill. So our plan now as a nonprofit organization is to continue to advocate for these horses to stay in the park. And where the problem comes in is these horses are not, they're not protected under the Wild Horse and Burro Act because they're in a national park. So what we are also asking our senators, and I've been asked to speak in Washington, D.C. at a wild horse conference, and I plan to make the most of that with our federal delegates, is to get these horses protected under a public law, similar to the way that the Shackelford Banks horses are at Cape Lookout National Seashore. Because this seems to be something, people have referenced Castle McLaughlin's report, and yes, every 10 to 20 years, the park seems to come out and say, hey, we're going to get rid of the horses, hey, we're going to get rid of the horses. They need some kind of federal protection to keep them here. As our resource for our state, it drives tourism, that's been well documented, and it just, so I don't know, I hope that answers your question.
Continue.
Well, I'm just curious, like, what are you folks thinking? Let's just say we pass this resolution, the feds ignore it, and they come in and start calling the herd this spring or this summer, whenever they plan to.
So
What will you expect of us at that point?
I think that what we expected from you is what's happening right now. We expected this resolution to be drafted, and we hope that this resolution passes. And I understand that it's got very heavy support. Like we said, on all the online, I know when I looked this morning, there were 181 comments. I don't know if it got more, but there was only one truly in opposition. So what we're hoping now is that in order to get federal support, at the time, we didn't have any of our federal legislators that were willing to say, hey, keep these horses. Now what's happened, which we're very happy about, is Senator John Hoeven especially is in favor of keeping the horses in the park, and he sits on the U.S. Subcommittee for National Parks. So he is committed to doing what he can to keep those horses in the park now and into the future. So this, to me, just gives weight behind the federal argument, and it was a necessary step in our advocacy. So we truly appreciate it. Okay. None of us on the advocacy side or within our North Dakota state legislators had any idea on if this resolution would work, what it would do, or what it would mean. A resolution, as Josh Boucher pointed out, is simply a request or a statement from the state of North Dakota. This resolution is the state of North Dakota letting our federal legislators know they want the horses to stay. And I also want to point out, and I hope that you saw in that clip, those were our senators that were on the committee that we testified in front of. They had no idea what good this was going to do. What is the story here? What is the park trying to do? And it was those of us that showed up to testify that day that helped inform them and give them the information they needed to move forward with the resolution. I can call our North Dakota state legislators. Their numbers are listed on our legislative website for the state of North Dakota. When I call Senator Hoeven's office, I'm usually talking to his chief of staff. I have had one personal meeting with Senator Hoeven in the 7 years that I've been calling his office. That meeting took place last year when I was in Washington, D.C. During the quick meeting, he said to me, I think we're going to be able to save those horses, but we may have to compromise on the numbers. He said that last line to me as he was turned to walk out the door. I could have let him walk, but instead I spoke up and said, we can't compromise on the numbers. That's not what the people of the state of North Dakota want, or Governor Burgum and what he's asking. We are asking for a genetically viable herd of horses to remain in the park. So I'm going to share with you one last tech-savvy moment here. A statement from Senator Hoeven from last week that I think is important to share.
The National Park Service is set to decide next month on the fate of the wild horses in Theodore Roosevelt National Park. The Park Service has released a summary of public comments on whether the horses should stay or go. Senator John Hoeven is behind legislation to keep the animals where they are.
that directs them to retain horses as part of the Interior Department's appropriation bill for this year. So that also puts Congress on record in support of horses and really puts us in a position, I think, if we can't, or if they don't come through and keep horses, like I think they will, based on our ongoing negotiations, we would be in a position then to essentially go back and prohibit them from having using any funding to remove horses from the parks.
Hoven says Congress wants to maintain the genetic diversity in the park.
So what if I didn't stop him that day? What if I just let him walk out of the room and hope that he came to that? What if I was too timid to speak up? Remember, we get one chance, and I can't stress that enough. I can also say that I've had several conversations with his office about a compromise on the number of horses, and Chasing Horses Wild Horse Advocate stands firm in our fight for a genetically viable herd of horses. We're happy that his office understands the importance of this issue. Senator Hoven's job is to take the voices of the people of North Dakota to Washington, D.C. What he votes on and the actions he does are supposed to represent what the people of North Dakota want. Without question, Senator Hoven knows the people of North Dakota want wild horses in Theodore Roosevelt National Park. The work he has done and continues to do reflects that. I would imagine that he likes his job. He just got rehired in 2022 and his current term ends in 2029. So just a quick recap on a few things, and then I'll finish this up and turn it over to Heather, and then we'll take questions. Number one, and I can't stress this enough, educate yourself. We need educated advocates to create change. And remember, opinions are not facts. There's a lot of misinformation out there, so make sure you're educating yourself with credible resources before you're talking to any legislators. To this end, I can tell you that when I speak with our North Dakota House Majority Leader, Mike LaFleur, he truly appreciates the knowledge I have on this issue, as well as my ability to reach out to other advocates in other states for help as we work together to save these horses. Number two, find the right people to contact. On a federal level, more than likely, we're not going to be able to talk to our elected officials. Don't discredit the knowledge of congressional staffers. I also learned while lobbying Congress last year that there's a huge value in talking to congressional staff. Many of them had a wealth of information to share with us, including that our little resolution from the state of North Dakota that no one was sure would do anything was now actually a very powerful tool in our advocacy toolkit. You know how happy that made our North Dakota legislators? And you can bet the congressional staff have regular conversations with their boss. In retrospect, and from conversations with some of those congressional staffers, going right to our federal legislators first is not always the best answer. Although I will always emphasize the importance of establishing a relationship with their offices. One of the congressional staffers we talked to said, our state resolution was great, but if we can get that support down to a county level, that's even better. That prompted me to attend many Medora City Council meetings as I worked with them to draft and pass their own resolution. Consider this. I can call on our county and state legislators and speak with them directly. When I call Senator Hoven's office, I speak with his chief of staff. When our state legislators call our federal delegates, they can call John, Kelly, or Kevin directly. If you can get your state and local legislators concerned about your issue, they can help you navigate through the necessary legislative channels. Number three, make the call, send the email, send a postcard or a letter, fill out the online form, make contact, start somewhere. From the county level to the federal level, let the people you hired know how to be successful in the job you hired them for. Be respectful and be educated. Be ready to respectfully correct misinformation with facts, not opinions. Work on establishing a relationship. Also, make sure you are talking to the right people in the office. The person who answers the phone or the receptionist sitting at the desk is probably not the one you need to share your concerns with, but they can direct you to the person who can help you. They don't need to hear the entire story that you want to share. Number four, send a thank you email for a phone call or email response. Keep your name in their head and just remember that gratitude really does go a long way. Number 5, stay in touch. There are often personnel changes in these offices, so make sure you stay in touch and keep your issue fresh. When I started talking to Senator Hoeven's office, they would always direct me to my calls to his office in Watford City. The woman I talked to there would listen to my concerns and then give me a scripted response. Chris, the senator is well aware of your concerns about the wild horses at Theodore Roosevelt National Park. Is there anything new you want to add to your file? I've also spent 7 years contacting my federal legislators asking for help for the TRMP wild horses. It took a few years, but I don't get the scripted responses anymore. I also didn't give up the first time I got that response. Establishing a relationship is extremely important. There's only one way to do that. Make the call, send the email, fill out the online form, contact your representative. I'm going to turn this over to Heather now for a quick presentation on how to find your state and federal legislators, and then we will answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
I am going to, and thank you for hosting this Zoom meeting today. I just want everybody to know that this was Chris's idea, that we start putting these Zooms together for you guys. And, you know, what Chris has been able to do with the TRNP horses is just, it's fantastic. And what she wants to do is share that knowledge with you guys. And so that's why we've started doing these Zoom meetings. And hopefully this is the first of many Zoom meetings. So I'm just going to share my screen here. Yes, I have the new population census that came out today up on my screen. Let's see. New slideshow. Okay. I just want to start by saying that while Chris was talking, I was thinking about some of the things that that Josh had said while he was talking to her in the Zoom meeting. And I just remember many, many, many years ago, I was driving through the state of Nevada with my parents on the way to Oregon from Arizona. And, you know, oftentimes in Nevada, you're just way out in the middle of nowhere. And I remember my dad pointing out to me, hey, there's some wild horses. And I just kind of laughed and said, yeah, right. Because I had no idea that we had wild horses. I grew up in Arizona and Oregon, and I was always a horse lover for as long as I can possibly remember. And even though I lived in Southern Oregon for 13 years and I lived in Arizona for quite a few years, I had no idea that we had wild horse and burro herds in both of those states. So if I didn't know about it and I was a horse lover, I don't think we can expect our legislators to know about it. And that's something that they even often say to us, you know, during those meetings that we had in Washington, D.C. last April, that Chris was a part of. Many legislators, we didn't know we had wild horses. So it is our job to inform them and tell them what we want. So that's why Chris and I have started this set of Zoom meetings. And we decided to go ahead and give the group a name, which is going to be Wild Horse Advocacy Actions. And I love this little quote by Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. And I think we all need to keep that in mind when we're working to get our wild horses and burros saved and kept on our public lands. All right, so I'm going to discuss with you guys how to find out who your U.S. congressional members are. You all have 2 U.S. senators. You all have 1 U.S. representative, and then you have your state and county legislators. So if you want to find out who your U.S. representatives are, or who your congressional members are, there's this few different ways to do that. But the one I like is the one down here at the bottom. And I'm going to put the link in the chat box before we're done today. But find your members in the U.S. Congress. These are going to help you find the actual members who go to D.C., who are on the Hill, your actual members of the United States Congress. So if you click on that link there, it's going to prompt you to enter in your zip code. And again, I'll put the link in the chat box as soon as I'm done. So here's what the screen will look like. Pretty simple. Put in your zip code. The next screen that will come up once you hit enter is it will show you who your 2 U.S. senators are and who your U.S. representative is. And right there on that screen, you have their Washington, D.C. addresses, their Washington, D.C. phone numbers. So what you need to do is get yourself a piece of paper or a nice little notepad on your computer and make note of who all of these people are and write down their DC address, their DC phone numbers, And then you want to click on the contact tab, which is right there, the little blue one. That will actually take you to their website. And from their website, you can scroll down. Generally, it's at the bottom right on the front homepage of their website. You can scroll down, and again, you'll see the Washington, D.C. address listed with the phone and fax number, and then they'll have their state office listed. You want this information as well, because anytime you send in a letter, it's really a good idea to send it both to the DC office and to the local state office. And the reason I say that is I recently talked to an advocate from California who had a friend or relative who works or did work in the postal room for Capitol Hill. And she said that oftentimes mail will take 60 days to get delivered to the Congress members in Washington, D.C. So to have this local state address where you can also send mail is essential. Also on your senator and U.S. representatives screens, you want to make note of this here contact tab up at the top. Email me about an issue. Sometimes these will be worded slightly different, but what this page allows you to do is to go ahead and just send them an email right through their website. And I use this all the time, especially right now with contacting my representative Tokuda about the SAFE Act.
Heather, can you go back to that screen for a minute? Because I think that there's something else too that we miss. Not just email me about an issue, but a lot of them have a thing that says help with a federal agency. And I think we all need help with the federal agency. You need help with the Interior Department, the BLM, the Park Service, whatever. So there usually is an option for that also.
Absolutely, Chris. And also the newsletter sign up down there at the bottom, you guys. If you sign up for that, then you will also get notifications from these people about when they maybe are working in their home states and when they're going to be having like coffee with legislators, like Chris mentioned earlier, or they're going to have a town hall where they invite you guys to come and talk to them. Even if you can get 60 or 90 seconds of their time at those town hall meetings to start bringing up wild horses with them, that is key. And those newsletters will let you know when they're going to be holding those. Okay, so I pulled up Rep. Grijalva's website, and because I wanted to point out that sometimes some of your representatives will have multiple offices within their state. So Grijalva, for example, has his DC office, but he also has offices in Tucson, Somerton, and Tolleson. So the best thing to do, I would assume that his main state office is going to be in Tucson, but the best thing to do is call any one of these three offices and ask them which one would be the main state office that you could send mail to. And that way you're not having to send it to all three, but the main one that he spends most of his time at. Okay, so besides your 2 US senators and your 1 US representative, you also need to find out who your state legislators are. So all I did was type into Google how to find my state representative for Arizona. And boom, it brought up right there, find my legislator. So I clicked on that page and it brought me to this page here. And so what I did was, after reading through this a little bit and clicking around a little bit, I clicked on click here to find the legislative district you live in. This is going to be different for every state. For my Hawaiian address, when I popped it in, who are my Hawaii state legislators, it actually brought up a map and I just had to click on the map approximately where I lived and it would give it to me. And this is the example for Arizona. So y'all might see something a little different when you type it in, but just do a little exploring so that you can see exactly where it is that they're going to give you that list of those legislators. So once I clicked on that one, then it gave me the Arizona State Legislator House of Representative members. So you can see which districts they represent. Their phone numbers are listed right over here on the right-hand side, as well as their email addresses. In this case, you can email them directly through this website, but you can also just go ahead and give their phone number a call and ask for a direct email address. And then I did this as an example. So for California, if I did how to find my state legislators in California, this was the option that came up. So in this case, California wants you to put in your street address, your city, and your zip code. And then once you click locate, then it will give you a list of the legislators in those areas. All right, so this is information that you need to have on hand at all times. And just so you guys know, I am going to put the slideshow presentation from today up on the website, and Chris is going to have a copy of the recording available on her YouTube channel, so you'll be able to refer back to this. But this is kind of your homework from this Zoom lesson today. What you need to do is gather up the name of each state and U.S. legislator. So your 1 U.S. representative, your 2 U.S. senators, and your local state legislators. As Chris says, these are going to be both at the county and state level, and it could be anywhere from 1 to 10 people. So you'll need to do a little bit of research to find out who those people are. You will want to include the DC address for your U.S. congressional members, and then your local state addresses for both your U.S. Congress members and your state and county legislators. You'll need phone numbers for each of their offices. Then you want to go ahead and call that phone number and ask for the name of the staffer or aide who handles public lands, natural resources, appropriations, and or animal issues. Not all offices are going to have staffers who handle all of those things, and some of the offices will not have any staffers or aides who handle public lands or natural resources, but there's almost always going to be one that will handle animal issues. Then you want to ask for the email address of those staffers or aides so that you have their specific email addresses on hand. And then, like I said earlier, go ahead and sign up for email notifications so that you can see when they're doing town halls and meetings for constituents to attend. That same advocate from California who told me about the poster room on the Hill, Capitol Hill, she also said that she was just getting ready to go to her local state legislators town hall meeting, and that she fully intended on bringing up wild horses with him. All right, and then we will have a new Facebook group. This Facebook group is going to be very specific to what Chris and I are trying to teach you guys. So it will be solely about wild horse advocacy actions. The posts that will be on the Facebook page are going to be strictly about how to help you guys contacting your legislators and what to say. And it will also be a means of you guys to reach out to each other for support or to reach out to us for support. One of the hopes that we are able to do with you guys is to get some of you from the same states to join together so that you can work together contacting your state legislators, and you can work together to contact your U.S. senators. Perhaps you guys can join each other on Zoom calls, phone calls, attend those town hall meetings together. And if you get an in-person meeting, then you can join with each other to go to those as well. It'd be a great support source for you guys. All right, so that's all I had there. Chris, did you have anything you wanted to share on any of that?
No, I don't have anything, Heather. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, does anybody have any questions? I don't see any in the chat box right now. Oh, Julie has her hand raised. Julie, do you want to unmute and ask a question? Or you can type it in the text box, Julie. If you click the 3 little buttons in the upper right-hand corner of your box where it says Julie, you should be able to unmute. There you go.
Okay, I got it. I was going to the mute button down at the bottom. Okay. So basically, Stephanie Milton and myself have a meeting this Thursday with Senator Van Hollen's office, and he's in Maryland. I had a quick question. So I know that you had tried, and maybe a few other wild horse advocates had tried to get a meeting with Stone Manning and Holland. I'm just curious as to when that timeline was, because I'm going to bring that up to Sung, who's the aide that we're talking to, and Stephanie has spoken with her before about issues, and so I was just curious about that.
So I can tell you that when we were planning our trip to Washington, D.C., I reached out to National Park Service Director Sam's and to Tracy Stone Manning's office. I am currently in queue for scheduling of a meeting with Director Sam's deputy, like the next in line underneath him. So I'm waiting for my appointment with them. And I am also now being considered for a meeting with Tracy Stone Manning's office. So that's as far as I've gotten, and Deb Holland's office hasn't responded to me at all.
Okay. And then Heather, you had tried, right, a couple of years ago, and they wouldn't have a meeting with you.
We tried last year during the conference while we were in DC to get an appointment with Stone Manning. I'll be honest with you, I don't think we started that process early enough. We were told that she didn't have any time to meet with us, but she was meeting with the Public Lands Council group, which happened to be in Washington, DC at the same time as we were. And then I don't know if it was Chris who told me or somebody else, but I've heard a few times lately that if you do want to get an appointment with Stone Manning or Holland, for example, that it is a good idea to reach out to your senators or your representatives and request they help you with that meeting.
Okay, so then that will be, so Chris, sounds like you've got something in the works. So I just essentially want to bring that up to Sung and say that it's important that wild horse advocates be able to set up meetings with the head of the BLM to discuss these issues. They're important, or that my senator or representatives are able to, that they be accessible to them too when they like have requests of them. I know that Stephanie said Sung was going to find out. She had a big concern about the horses that are in the corrals, the long term, about their health and safety, and a few other things. So I'm hoping that Thursday when we talk to her, that she gives us a little more information about that. But this is something that we're going to bring up. And then we have your letters. I felt like I needed to deliver those instead of mailing them out when you sent them out. So thank you for that. And for myself personally, not to take up everybody's time, I had talked to Trone's office. He's my congressman here in Maryland for my district about the wild horse roundups. And I spent 45 minutes to an hour with one of his aides here in the Frederick area and showed them videos of the roundups, horses being run into barbed wire, the helicopter chases, the horse with the broken leg, things like that. So they're aware of that and information that they sent down to the DC office. So I'm going to let him know that I'm going to be stopping in to deliver some stuff. And then I held off because I thought we were going to meet in Washington, but I realized that things like not everybody, or you didn't get enough interest or whatever, but I'm still going to follow through on that. And then Stephanie and I, since we're in Maryland, I don't know if anybody on this live lives in Maryland, but we're going to try and find people that are in Maryland that can join us so we can start building a larger, even just a handful of people, grouping of individuals that can start working on this. And the intent is that I have Trone, she has Steny Hoyer. In his district, we're going to try and find somebody in Jamie Raskin. So if we can get enough people in a few districts, then we can talk to more congressmen about this and try and do some kind of coalition here in Maryland. So that's kind of where we're at. And I appreciate everything the two of you do. I didn't even know about wild horses. My cousin Diane told me about it. And if she hadn't told me about it, I wouldn't know anything. So, yeah.
Thank you, Julie. I mean, I think everything you're doing there is fantastic steps. And that's part of what we hope to do with the Facebook group too, is to get some more people on there where you guys can join together and work together. And I know Diane has also had meetings with her people in her state, and kudos to her for getting those meetings and being able to talk with everybody. I know she goes in there by herself. She has someone else I think she takes with her at least one other time. And these are the steps that are important. Keep in mind too, what Chris has been talking about as far as contacting your state level and your county level people too, because if you're having any troubles getting appointments with your US senators or US representative, these people can possibly help make that happen as well. That's right, Chris.
Right. And I also have a couple other things to add. So like, great job, Julie. And I give you a lot of kudos for everything you're doing. But one thing, a couple things I want you to understand is, and these are things that have been said to me from Senator Hoven's office. They can't make Tracy Stone Manning, even Secretary Holland. Like if you look at um times when Congress has requested them to come and speak in front of different committees and they refuse, they can't force them to even talk to them. So they can't force them to talk to us. But I do think the more that our congressional people are hearing, I requested a meeting and they're denying or they're not answering, or, I'm stuck in a scheduling queue, whatever that means. I think that that helps bring to light problems and issues within the agency. And that's why I say when you contact them through their websites, we need help with the federal agency. That's what we're contacting them about. We've got issues, but the issue is with the federal agency. The other thing too is, I don't know, and this I guess would be maybe where you can help with this too. Our state legislators here in North Dakota were interested because we have wild horses here. I don't know how it works at a state level when you're not when you don't have wild horses there. But I do think that it still is worth, no matter what, getting that relationship established. Because like I said, I talk to our House Majority Leader, Mike LaFleur, all the time. What's on the website, and I don't think I talked about this when Heather shared it, like when you go to our North Dakota State Legislator website, it gives you their cell phone numbers. So really, when I say that I was calling everybody in North Dakota to get someone to do this resolution, they were picking up their cell phones. Hi, this is Mike. And it was like, I had no idea he was the House Majority Leader or what was happening. But when I call and talk to him, we'll set up meetings and we'll talk. And if I say things to him like, do you know Congressman Armstrong is now running for governor? What is his stand on this? Because a lot of us are concerned he wasn't really on board with keeping the horses and now he's running for governor. Are we going to get the same support that Bergen was giving us? And his exact words to me are, I'm having a meeting with Kelly later this week. So to me, it's Congressman Armstrong. To him, he's just going to call Kelly up and talk to him probably the same way that I call his cell phone. So the state connection is really important because they can really help navigate through the federal process a lot more and get them on board with concerns.
And I just want to follow that up with, oftentimes people say, well, we don't have any wild horses in our state. Should we bother contacting our legislators? 100% absolutely. And even if possibly at the state level, they're just not at all interested in hearing about it. As an American taxpayer, I don't care what state you live in or what territory you live in that's also part of Congress. Because American Samoa, Guam, Puerto Rico, they all have members that are in Congress. Your tax dollars from all 50 states and the territories are funding the wild horse roundups. So even if you're calling your legislators in, I don't know, what state doesn't have wild horses? Minnesota. Your biggest thing is going to be, well, it's still our taxpayer dollars that are being used to fund these roundups. And you, as a representative or senator, are still the ones supporting or not supporting these bills. So no matter what, make your voices heard. It doesn't matter what state you're in. I also was just reading Debbie's comment about the Public Lands Council people. She said that after the conference last year that they sat next to her at Reagan Airport, and she ends it with, this group is well connected. And I just want to say with her that I agree on that. While we were walking around the halls of DC last year, they were standing in the hallways, also walking into representatives' offices the same time we were, with their huge big cowboy hats on and their belt buckles. And the thing is that they spend far more time on Capitol Hill and talking to legislators than wild horse advocates do. So it is important, imperatively important, that we make our voices heard as often as the Public Lands Council is. And that when you make your voices heard, you do so in a well-educated manner. So you cannot just call your legislators and say, stop the roundups. That's not enough information. They don't know what to do with that. You need to gather information together, some of which Chris and I will work to provide to you, or which you will find in the letters that I write for you guys that Julie acknowledged, such as the McCulloch Peaks letter that I asked everybody to mail in a couple weeks ago. There's vital information that you guys need to have on hand to discuss with your legislators when you actually call and talk to them. one other quick little point I just want to make. Do not combine the SAFE Act with wild horse roundups. That is confusing to legislators. It is two different legislative issues. The SAFE Act is for all American equines, both domestic and wild, horses and donkeys and burros. And if you're going to discuss the SAFE Act, it needs to be done in a separate phone call or a separate email, but do not combine the two together. You definitely want to keep those two issues separate from each other.
So
Julie was
I want to
asking-
just, can I
Go ahead,
interject
Chris.
for a minute? One, I forgot, I lost my train of thought with something.
Sorry.
On a state level, there also is nothing wrong. I think that, like, you know, like we see, like what happened with McCullough Peaks is a great opportunity where everyone was saying, like, call your federal legislators, call your federal legislators, call your federal legislators. But that's a point where contacting people at a state level, the state legislators would make a difference. And that's part of why I also shared the video clip from Representative Josh Boucher, because you heard him say the state legislators were hearing from people, not only from the state of North Dakota, but from across the United States and the world. And so that they're first going to respond to their constituents, because we're the ones who elect them, right? Somebody in California can't tell people in North Dakota what to do because nobody cares, right? You're living a different life in California than we are in North Dakota, and you're not electing our officials in any way. So they care again about the people who hire them. So that's one thing, is just make sure there's no reason why the rest of us can't call state representatives in other states. It doesn't have to be at a federal level. But the big thing is we have to have people from that state who are also concerned. Otherwise, again, I can't call Montana. I can call, but I'm not electing those people. I'm not hiring those people to work for me. So just remember that as we go through, this period. And then I forgot what the other thing was now. It'll come back to me. But you can let them know absolutely that you're spending money as a tourist in the state. That's a very big thing that's helped the Theodore Roosevelt National Park horses, is the money that drives in for tourism. Even though they can't quantify it, they know that it's a big portion of what happens here, and money drives everything. Oh, the other thing I was going to say, and Heather and I have had this conversation privately before, but I want to share it here too. I feel like we have to get to a place where we're not blaming the ranchers and the cattlemen and all those things in the other states. And I'm not sticking up for them, but they're within the confines of the law. And what I've said to Heather is, if like some miracle happened and Congress said, you know what, you're right, these lands were set aside for horses, all the cattle and sheep have to go, what are the ranchers going to do? They're not going to just sit back and complain on Facebook. They're going to do something about it. And that's what we need to do. They're within their rights, the way that the laws and the policies are written right now. So if we're mad at them, it's not them to be mad at. We need to change the policy. And that's something I say all the time too about Theodore Roosevelt National Park. We can get the superintendent fired. We can request that. We could request Blake McCann, her chief resource manager, be replaced. They're just going to go somewhere else, and they're going to put somebody else in that place to do the exact same thing that the Park Service is trying to do. The policies need to change. So I think that that's a perspective that we need to switch. Again, they're doing what's in right now allowed by the policy.
Absolutely, 100%. All right, you guys, we're at an hour. So unless anybody else has any other quick questions, I think we're going to let you go for today. I did put the 2 links in the chat, the one about finding your Congress member. I'll copy and paste that again. And also the link to the new Facebook page, which I will have up on Save Our Wild Horses soon, so that you guys can find that. And again, this is going to be a very dedicated group. So we're looking for people who will take action, who are willing to make those calls, send those emails, write those letters, because that is what is going to make real change and helping to keep our wild horses on our public lands. Anything else, Chris?
No, I think that we're going to try to do another talk in a couple weeks, and maybe if you guys join the group, I'll put a link on our site too, and let us know like, do you guys want to go from here and go talk to your state and federal delegates or set up appointments and kind of talk about that in a Zoom next time, like kind of like almost like a conference call with anybody who wants to talk? Or do you want us to come up with other topics to help you be successful in advocating? So just kind of think about that and where you want to go from here and what you want to do or how we can help.
Yeah, because really our goal is to help you guys learn to make your voices heard and to help you guys know what to say and to give you the courage to reach out to these people, because remember, they're just people too. You know, you're not calling to talk to Brad Pitt or Julia Roberts, who we might be a little bit intimidated by, but these are just people who were regular people, and then they were nominated or elected to do a job in the Senate or the Congress, whether it's at the federal level or the state level. And like Chris said, they want to hear from us. They work for us. It is their job to listen to us. And sometimes just being insistent and getting in touch over and over again is what it takes to make those things happen. So like Chris said, she'll send out a thing and ask you guys, you know, what kind of direction you sort of want these Zooms to take. And then you're welcome to contact either one of us at any time if you have any questions, so that we can help you move forward with your advocacy.
And I agree with what everybody's saying. I can tell you that we've had a lot of different organizations stand with us for the wild horses of Theodore Roosevelt National Park, but it is really hard to get advocates together and different groups and organizations. So as much as we can get people together. I'm all for that. But I'm also, I think, more all for getting people together. I don't know that we'll ever agree. You know, people will always have their differences of opinion on different aspects of wild horse advocacy and what's important to them. And that's part of the problem. And it's been part of the problem, if you can believe it, from when Wild Horse Annie was doing this. She talked about it in one of the books about her that I've been reading. So there's a lot of things that have been going on for way too long that we need to change. And so I think that we just need to work on not focusing on being one united group. We just need to be a united group of people that are asking for the same things. And I think that could be equally impactful.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris, for coming up with the idea to do these. It's much appreciated.
No problem. Does anybody else have any other questions or thoughts to share before we go? All right, I will get this up on our YouTube channel today, hopefully, and yeah, let us know what you guys want to see in the future. And I know Heather gave the link for the Facebook page. She'll put it on her page. I'll put it on our page, and we hope to see you guys next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.